This is Jake, and 6 months ago he was throwing 84 miles an hour. Now he sits in the low 90s up to 92 and well on his way to throw in the mid 90s. So today I'm going to break down exactly how he was able to gain 8 miles an hour within 6 months. But here's the thing, I'm going to break this all down so that you can start implementing this stuff into your own training to gain pitching velocity as well. Let's get straight into the video. For Jake, the first thing that we did with him was a lot of power work. He had a really good strength base, right? And more specifically, he could deadlift 4 plates plus, he could squat 3+ plates on each side, and he could bench with like 2 plates on each side. So this is a pretty good strength base, right? You're already strong. Now we need to figure out why you're throwing slow even when you have a good strength base. And usually the case with this, especially with college guys who go to college and do a lot of their lifting stuff, right, and get big and strong, but still throw the same speed, is they lack power. Real quick, if you're in a similar situation where you're throwing under 90 miles an hour, you can book a call below and we'll see if we can help you get to 90 miles an hour and beyond. All right, so the first thing that Jake did to build power was to do dynamic effort days. And basically what this means is to take your compound lifts and add some bands to them, right? And when you add these bands, it helps build power by a couple ways, and I'm going to get into this in a second. But this type of training originated from Westside Barbell, right? With Louis Simmons. It's like the best powerlifting gym in the world, and they found that by doing this type of lifting, the dynamic effort days, their athletes gained a lot of rate of force development and power. And so we incorporated this with Jake with really, really good results. Now, one of the exercises that we did with Jake was a speed squat. And now this might look light, right? But the bands are actually pulling me down. And what these bands do is that when I'm at the bottom of my range, these bands are pretty slack, right? It gets pretty light, but then it gets heavier and heavier and heavier as they get stretched. And so the reason we use bands, when we're squatting and we're trying to do it for speed, we're trying to be as explosive as possible. But the body doesn't want to overextend, right? It doesn't want to injure itself. So when it gets to like this part, it's going to stop pushing hard just so that it can decelerate so that we won't like hyperextend our legs, okay? But what the bands do is that it makes it heavier at the top ranges. So then we actually have to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep putting a lot of force into the ground to be able to get that up. And so what it helps with, to continuously put force into the ground, okay? Now, especially with speed, you're going down, and it forces you to keep pushing as hard as you can. And it also, another good thing about the bands is that it snaps you down. When you're here and you go down quickly, like speed lift, it's snapping me down, right? Because there's so much tension with the bands. Now, I'm at bottom range. Now I can explode because it's lighter in my weaker ranges, right? It's lighter, so it's easier for me to explode up. And in my stronger ranges, we're all gonna be stronger in these top end ranges, right? It's gonna add weight so that we continuously have to push up. And so we did this with Jake. So the banded squats, we did even trap bar with bands, right? Same concept, single leg type stuff. And we did these like 3 times a week. So that is really developing that power and it's constantly getting exposed to that stimulus. Now, the way I like to visualize power and why it's so important is like this. Imagine this line is your strength and your force production potential. So this is how much force you can actually produce, right? This would be like a 1 rep max squat or 1 rep max deadlift, okay? And then this line is how much of this you can tap into in the pitching delivery. Now the pitching delivery happens in milliseconds, and so you don't have, 6 seconds that it takes for a max squat, right? You can't put all that force into the ground because you need to be able to produce it in milliseconds, right? And so this is your ability to produce force, and this is your potential to produce force. Now, as we get better at power and rate of force development, we can start to creep this up. And some of the most elite athletes are able to tap into about 80% of their force production potential. But a lot of guys who are really strong but still throw kind of slow, like 85 and below, they're usually not tapping into any of this stuff. It's either that or they have terrible mechanics, which I'll touch on in a second. But for Jake, we saw that he had a lot of area to improve in the power part, right? To increase this from, if he was only tapping into 50%, then we could try to increase this slowly so that it's actually tapping into more of his potential. Now, the second way we attacked power for Jake was using overcoming isos, and we use these for stability as well as rate of force development and power. Quick reminder for those of you who aren't ready to work with us one-on-one just yet, I have a free program below that you can go and access and try it for yourself before going intensive with our one-on-one program.
So one of the variations of the overcoming isos that Jake did was a squat overcoming iso. Now how this looks is you put the bar underneath something that won't move, right? You're in a squat position and now you're gonna drive as hard as you can. And we would hold for 3 to 6 seconds. Another variation that we did with him, which is personally one of my favorites, is the split stance overcoming iso, where you're in a split stance position, you put the bar underneath something that won't move, and you drive up as hard as you can. Now, what this is doing is it's building position-specific strength, right? What does this look like? This is the position that we'll be in, especially the front leg, during the front leg block, right? And so we're building really, really stable and strong position-specific strength so that we're really strong in this position. Same goes with the back leg, which was a huge focus for Jake. We're building, especially with the squat isos, right? We're building position-specific strength in his back leg where he'll be when he's going down the mound. Right? And I'm going to touch on his back leg in the second half of this video when we talk about his mechanics and how he revamped his mechanics. Now, the third key thing that we worked on with Jake in the weight room and building that engine was jump training. And so we incorporated a bunch of plyometric exercise within his program. And I'm going to run you through a couple that we thought had the most significant impact on his training. For the first one, we incorporated side-to-side skater jumps. And our purpose with this is to improve his ability to change direction, because that's what he was lacking, right? He had a hard time really putting force to change direction on both sides. So this might sound really simple, right? A skater jump, but this had a major impact on his pitching velocity. So it looks something like this. Basically, what we're trying to do here is we are trying to land and then put a lot of force to be able to change direction. We're training that ability to absorb and then put a lot of force into the ground to be able to change direction. Now, we also did another variation of these, which was more of the front leg block skater jump. And so how we do this is it's a skater jump, but when we land, we are trying to emulate what it's like to front leg block, okay? And so it looks something like this. Okay, what does that look like? It's basically in the pitching delivery, right? We are creating a lot of momentum down the mound. Obviously, we're not trying to jump down the mound, but we create momentum down the mound, and our front leg has to be able to absorb all of that force, right? And so that's what we're training with this is, okay, we're going to absorb, create force with our back leg, and then now absorb and create force with our front leg. Okay, so we're getting a little bit more pitching specific with this exercise. Now, the second thing we did was incorporate some sort of banded jump, right? Both assisted, where it's helping you pull yourself up, or resisted, where it's pulling you down. And so an assisted jump might look something like this, where you're holding the band, right? It's hooked onto something, and it's gonna pull you up. Now, basically what this is doing is overspeed work, right? And so it's exposing the body to a speed that it's never exposed to before. It's exposing the body to a speed that it's not able to produce on its own, right? When you have a band and it's helping you go up, you're gonna be way more quicker than if you just do it yourself, right? And so we're trying to speed up that central nervous system, expose the body to those speeds, and let it adapt so it can create those speeds on its own. Now, as far as resisted jumps go, there's a couple different ways of doing it. My favorite way is to have a belt where you do a belt squat and you can put the band here, hook it up to that, and you can jump up and down. We also did stuff like trap bar jumps, where you have a trap bar, you load it, and you just jump up and down. Again, training that ability to absorb, right? When you land, absorb, and then rapidly produce force to be able to get up high.
And so on the building the engine side, this is what we did. We built him a completely custom program that attacked his specific deficiencies in terms of power and speed, right? And the specific deficiencies of something like change of direction, concentric impulse, these specific things that Jake needed to get better at, we programmed certain exercises so that he would get better at that. And over time, he became much, much better.
All right, so on the mechanical side for Jake, the big thing that we focused on was his back leg. Now, what he wanted to do, right, previously when he came to us when he was throwing 84 miles an hour, was he thought that he needed to load as deep into this back leg as possible, right, to be able to create power into the throw. Now, this is a huge misconception that even I fell into. When I was with the Phillies, this was how I threw. Right? And I was still able to get up to the mid-90s this way, but it's just not the most efficient way of throwing, which is you go up and then it's like a single leg squat almost, where you're just squatting into the back leg and then you try to power yourself out of it. What I call this is the L-shaped delivery, right? Because you go down and then you go out. Now, the problem becomes it feels really strong. And this is why a lot of players do it, is it feels really strong to be able to load into your back leg, sit into your back leg, right? You hear this all the time. It's like, get into your back leg, sit into your back leg. And so they think that, oh, I just need to do a single leg squat into the back leg, and then now I can generate as much power going toward the target, right? But what this was causing for Jake was he was getting just way stuck over the rubber. Okay? He wasn't able to accelerate his center of mass toward the target to create pitching velocity. And so the big fix that we made here was actually putting him in a janitor setup. So instead of him being here, he was more closed off. Now what this helped him do was feel tension in his back leg, right? So it felt pretty strong already. And now all he needed to do was get down the mount. Okay? He didn't have to create anything by loading into his back leg or anything like that. And this goes back to what I talk about a lot of the time, which is creating an impulse with the back leg. And another way of saying creating an impulse is to find stability in the back leg. Okay, so with the pitching delivery, we are trying to shift our center of mass during the drift phase a little bit, right? Whether it's straight here or you come to a balance point more like the Japanese players, and then you start to shift. But then you have to find some type of, you need an impulse or find stability within the back leg, okay? And so how you can do this is to feel tension. A couple ways we like to do it is to pinch the back hip, right? If you pinch your back hip, then you're gonna feel tension in the glute and the back leg, and you can just ride that down the mound, right? What we don't want is a dead back leg where we're here and then you just drop, right? Or you just like roll over like this. And so that was the biggest thing for Jake was, okay, when he was able to throw from the janitor setup, right? He was feeling that, he was already feeling stability in his back leg to be able to just rip the ball without having to create something that feels strong by doing a single leg squat. Now this leads me really nicely into the next thing that we worked on with him, which was, for Jake, the overall theme was to speed him up, right? He was a strong but slow athlete. And so we needed to speed him up, especially in the pitching delivery as well. And so we gave him one of these cues, which was to get to the front leg as quickly as possible, Okay, that was it. The simple external cue of just get to your front leg as quickly as possible. And what this did was it cleaned up so many things. Firstly, when you think about trying to get to the front leg as quickly as possible, you're not going to get to a balance point, right? And so you're going to be shifting your center of mass a little bit because you're like, okay, I need to get to my front leg. All right, how do I do that? You know, you're going to shift your center of mass. The body knows what it needs to do to accomplish the task. Okay, so for some of these athletes, a simple cue, like an external cue just like that, can clean up so many things down the line. What it also cleaned up was his back leg, right? If he's trying to get to his front leg as quickly as possible, he's not going to be spending a lot of time in a single leg squat. He's just going to be in and out of it, right? That's exactly what we wanted for him to speed up his delivery. And so this combination of being in a janitor setup plus getting to the front leg as quickly as possible cleaned up his lower body. And honestly, this was probably 80 to 90% of all of his velocity gains was his lower body patterning, right? That led to his huge 8-mile-an-hour increase. So this is the full blueprint of how we got Jake from 84 to 92 miles an hour. And again, if you need some help with getting to 90 miles an hour and beyond, that's all we do. And so you can book a call below and we can talk about how we can help you out. And if you want to see how we helped Hunter get from 82 to 90 miles an hour, then you can check out this video above. I think you'll really like it.